Hello there, welcome back to the Oldernar channel, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. The first video of its kind ever on this channel. I'm going to walk you through my recent edit of a snare drum on a drum sound for a track that I found from an old band that I used to be in. So let's listen to the snare sound now without any plugins on. Yeah, really bad, right? So yeah, this recording is from about 8 years ago. The snare sound in isolation, in fact the drum sound in isolation, is pretty poor. For some reason I did a really bad job of recording the drums. So it was only a demo though, I'll hasten to add. So let's hear it with the plugins on that I'm going to walk you through today. Okay, so still isn't a fantastic sounding snare in reality, but it's much improved on the original. So let's put that in the context of the whole drum kit now. So again, in terms of the snare, we've got the plugins off. And now on. And we're just going to hear a slightly different part of the track, so just early on in the verse. So again, let's turn the plugins off the snare. I'll turn them on. Turn off. Turned on. So there we go. Hopefully you can notice a really big difference. If you can't, then feel free to leave the video. So you go from having a dull sounding snare that sounds pretty trash to having something much brighter, much more powerful that is pushing through that mix. Let's hear that in the context of the whole track. So let's hear that same bit. Let's take the plugins just off the snare. Plugins back on the snare. So hopefully on the second listen there, you could hear that snare popping through the mix. It's quite a densely mixed, populated song, probably post-hardcore if you're thinking of genres. So there's a lot going on, a lot of loud guitars, loud vocals. Let's take the plugins off the snare. Let's put the plugins back on the snare. Okay, so you can hear the snare this time, and to me that sounds like a good snare, and actually a snare where the source material is actually pretty poor. So just imagine what you can do with these editing tricks on a really well recorded snare. So just for context, this is just a SM57, Shure SM57, top down onto a snare. Ideally, I would want a bottom and top snare, but in this instance, we've just got the top snare, so that's what we're playing with. Let's have a look at the plugins. I'm going to show you two plugins today that I use on my snare drums, and I have done for years to good effect, or certainly to my ears. So let's jump into the snare. Let's just isolate the snare. Okay, so I'm going to show you two main plugins today that will really make a massive impact on your snare sound. They're both from Waves. And let's just get a blank SSL channel up. So that's the first one that you want to be using. This is my save preset, which we're going to kind of replicate today, and I'll show you the moves that we're making over here on the left hand side. So let's start with the SSL channel. You'll notice a massive difference from using the SSL channel from the original snare, which is this, through to the edited version, which is this. Okay, cool. So I'm going to walk you through each step as we go. hopefully you'll be able to notice the difference, and I'll explain the reasons why I've made the certain decisions that I have. So let's turn this channel on. There's nothing on it at the moment. Let's start from the top. We'll work our way down on the left-hand side, which is almost that EQ part of the plugin. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm cutting out the low end. So we're going to around 120, and I'm taking out, keeping, basically just leaving it there, which means taking the whole frequency range out from 120 and below. You're not going to find much in your snare drum below 120 that you'd want to use, and anything below there, you're really getting in the way of your low end of your track, which will be your kick drum, your bass drum, etc. So we can just remove that out fairly safely, and you know, any of those low frequencies that are really muddy in the mix just come out. The next bit is your high frequencies. So there's some quite dramatic stuff going on here. We're going to around 6,000 hertz. Okay, so that high end. And we're going to make some quite big moves here. So there's two things that you notice in here. The snare suddenly becomes a lot brighter, almost brittle, and because there's so much bleed from the hi-hat coming into this snare microphone, on this particular snare sound, it doesn't sound too great. We're going to fix that in a bit, so don't worry about that for now. If you'd done a better job than I did 7-8 years ago of recording your snare with your mic set up, you wouldn't have to worry about that so much, but you might always get a bit of bleed from your hi-hat in particular into your snare sound, but that's where the gate will come in a bit. So that's your high frequencies. That's going to support with the overall sound. We're then going to about 3,000 hertz, and we're going to boost there. So I'm going to go up by about 6 dB. Okay, so again, that makes quite a big difference. Let's just take out all the 3 EQ moves I've made so far and see the before and after. That's before and after. Okay, so just bear with me. But we're getting that sort of mid-high, high frequencies that we want, and we've removed those really low frequencies out of the equation. Let's go to the low mid frequencies now, and we're going to remove about 500 out. So you'll see this on a lot of instruments. I do this frequently on guitar as well, just to remove that 500 out. You can get some nasty frequencies down in that 500 hertz range that your mix will just sound a bit clearer, a bit, you know, there's some nasty transients down there sometimes that you just want to remove. So there you go again, just a purer sound coming through now. Okay, at the moment the snare's sounding a lot brighter, right? And there's no real power to it, so we need to replace or bring in and emphasize some of those low frequencies now. So we've cut below 120. We're going to go and look at around 200 down here, and you're going to hear a big difference now to really fill out and give you a more well-rounded sound. Again, we're going to be quite aggressive. We're going to boost about 7-8 dB at 200, and we'll see what happens there. And we'll just do a bell curve, so we're not going to, it's a small notch that's going in specifically at 200. Let's take that out. Put it back in. Okay, so you should hear a big difference already. Let's take all of that out. There we go. Loads and loads of bleed and hi-hat that's coming in there that we need to sort now because it's annoying me. So let's go to the right-hand side of the plugin. I'm going to flick this over to analog because I just always do when I use the SSL channel. Just try and replicate that analog feel to it. And let's start with the gate. So we're going to be quite aggressive with the gate, rather, and then we're going to be quite aggressive with the compression in a second. So let's go to the gate, and we want to try and remove that hi-hat bleed that's coming through the microphone without killing off the snare sound or stopping, you know, transients or the ring out of the snare. Probably going to lose a little bit just because of how much bleed there is, and I don't really like that or want that in this context. So let's have a go. far too much. Okay, so let's just try that now with and without. Okay, and I'm just going to put the rest of the drum kit in, just the drum kit, with and without the gate. And what that means is that your drum sound now, the high end, so whether it's your overheads or your hi-hat, they're actually coming from the microphones that you purposely set up to record those, rather than an additional sound coming from your snare, which from a frequency perspective might not be what you want in terms of that high-end sound. So we've isolated that now. We'll go back to just the snare, and then we're going to just compress the snare on the top here. Again, I'm going to use quite an aggressive snare. It's quite an aggressive song, so I want that snare to really pop through the mix. So we need to be fairly aggressive what we're doing here. So let's give that a go. Okay, so that's pretty aggressive compression. We're going to add the compressor on in a minute. So that's not my main compression sound for my snare. Let's just take out the whole channel basically. So we'll bring the EQ in first. And now we'll bring in the gate and the compression. Let's hear that in the context of the whole drum kit, and then we'll go to the whole song. Start with nothing. Bring in the EQ. And now the gate and the compression. Cool, so that's the SSL channel. Let's get rid of that one. And then we're going to bring in the CLA76, which I love to use on snares. Another great Waves plugin compressor. So again, been really aggressive with the attack right up to 7. Let's hear this without. In fact, let's just hear the snare. And with it on. So it brings out some of those high transients of the hi-hat and stuff as well, but I don't really care at this stage. We've removed probably as much as I can without killing the snare sound. Let's just try that let's just try the snare sound without either, and then we'll bring them both in together. Okay, so a really dramatic difference, at least to my ears. Let's hear it with everything in, with them out. Cool, okay, so they're the main things that I do on my snare. There's a few other bits on there, but nothing too dramatic. Just in terms of shaping and sculpting that snare sound with a good EQ, getting it to cut through the mix, they're the main tools that I'd use. So if you've got Waves plugins or you're interested in them, I'll be using the SSL channel and the CLA76 compressor to do all that good stuff first and foremost. If you found anything of value on this video, then please feel free to check out any of our other videos that are up on the channel. And if you want to come along for the ride, then hit that subscribe button and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.